Let's talk about the new album, Richard Carpenter's Piano Songbook, a selection of Carpenter's greatest songs adapted to solo piano. And I've got to say, it's played beautifully, just terrific. How did the album idea come about?
It came about when I had received a call from Rachel Holmberg, who's senior A&R at Decca UK. I had visited Japan to promote the Carpenters with the RPO album, and we did like a Good Morning Japan show, and they asked me to play just one or two of my songs as a medley, which I did. And then not long afterward, I received this call, and Rachel had seen the show, even though she wasn't in Japan, doesn't matter anymore, and thought that an album of interpretations like the one that I'd played would go over very well. And that's how it came to be.
How difficult was it adapting all those songs just for a piano rendition?
It was difficult only in that, of course, I'm an arranger, and for all of these years, up until this album, I'd done all the arranging, most of the arranging for the Carpenters. So I'm used to working with an orchestra and background vocals and all of that. And just to perform the songs on solo piano was more difficult than any arrangements I've ever undertaken, because you have just the piano, and it's a remarkable instrument with a great range, but I wanted to get it so that it was appealing to people, but I didn't want it to sound too much like someone had walked into a piano bar. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it was a bit difficult. And then I wanted to make certain that I didn't overdo it, so that it didn't sound like I was showing off. So.
All right, so listening to the song Close to You on the Piano Songbook, it's a lot more laid back. The original version is very laid back, but it's even more laid back, a relaxing arrangement,
Yeah, the original, well, once Herb Alpert played me, he brought me what's called a lead sheet of originally They Long to Be Close to You, which only showed the melody, chord changes, and the lyric, nothing else. There's actually no arrangement to it. And he said, I have a recording of this. I don't want you to hear it. I don't want anything to influence your arrangement. So I took the lead sheet and came up with what became the Carpenters' arrangement.
Just like me, they long to be close to you.
Then I heard the original, which was quite a bit different, way different than the one I'd come up with.
Just like me, they long to be close to you.
So even though you could say the original hit of ours was laid back, it still had a lilt to it. It was like a slow shuffle, bum, dum, da, dum, dum. And I didn't want to just do that as an instrumental. So it's actually not in strict time, the one that's on the new album. And I didn't want to leave it just that I copied my original arrangement for the piano. So that's why it's a bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand that. And the album starts with a great medley. You've got Sing and Goodbye to Love, and I think there's Rainy Days and Mondays, which you've mixed all together, which just sounds incredible.
Well, thank you. I learned after, I'm kind of rooted in the past. I don't keep up with so many things that are the latest technological breakthroughs, or and actually streaming isn't all that new, but I don't think of streaming. I think of CDs and vinyl. And so it turns out that a medley wasn't the greatest idea, because the label wanted to break the songs up
Hmm.
So you could stream just Rainy Days or just
Yep.
Sing.
I see.
And they're not that long by themselves.
Hmm.
So it made for a bit of a challenge to separate them. I mean, when we get around to the next one, there'll be no more medleys.
Okay. All right. Well, all that piano practice years ago paid off, hey, Richard?
Yeah,
Because
it did. And if I practiced more, it would have been even better.
oh my goodness, I thought I saw a video of you on YouTube playing, and I just thought it was superb.
We did that at Studio A of the old A&M studio complex, which was like our second home. Now it belongs to Jim Henson organization, but yeah, I haven't been back there in years.
The album is out in the UK in January, I understand, on January the 14th.
That's right.
That's it. So anyway, I'd like to take you back to 1970. And we mentioned the song earlier, the song Close to You, the Carpenters' breakthrough hit from your second album on A&M Records. How did you get to record that song? What is the story? Because I've read so much about this, and obviously it was written by Burt Bacharach. How did it come to be?
And Hal David. Well, it was written in 1963. Mm. And originally, Burt had used it as an album cut on Dionne Warwick's, I think, second album, I'm getting rusty, as an album cut. I'd never heard it. And when Herbie had the hit with This Guy's in Love with You, which was a smash, #1 in 1968, he asked Hal David if he had anything in the trunk, a trunk song that may work for Herbie. And he gave him They Long to Be Close to You. And I learned all this later, of course. Herb tried it out. He didn't feel it worked for him, and he kind of tucked it away. And then 2 years later, a year later, we signed with A&M, and then a year after that, he got to thinking that the song still has potential, it just needs the right arranger. Yeah. And that's when he brought it to me.
Yep.
And so I said, I put together just using the lead sheet, which doesn't have an introduction. It doesn't have a break, an instrumental break. It doesn't have a little tag at the end, the ba-da-da-da. It's just the song itself. And I put together the arrangement. Karen and I recorded it, and we knew it was quite something special, but it was different, quite a bit different than anything that was out at the time. Our first single, which is a ballad arrangement I put together of Ticket to Ride, was still on the charts. It never turned into a hit, but it wasn't a stiff. And it stayed on and off the Billboard charts for months. So we had Close to You in the can. And finally, Ticket gave up its ghost, and we released the single on May 15th of 1970. And it was immediate. It was an immediate success.
How did you get those amazing harmonies? They sound so great, at the end of the song. How did you get to record those, to have that immense sound?
Well, many years ago, even then it was many years ago, but now Les Paul, the famed guitarist, had married a lady named Mary Ford, who had a lovely alto voice. And Les came up with all the different overdubbed guitars and the clever way he introduced this whole new sound. And Mary stacked up these vocals and she overdubbed them. Now, when I was a kid, I had no idea what overdubbing was, but I knew that one particular record, 4-part harmony, but there was something about it. It was more than 4, it sounded like 8. And that had a profound effect on me. So many years later, in the mid to late 60s, when I actually learned what overdubbing was and how that effect could be achieved, I was born to it like a duck to water. And so was Karen. And we started stacking up all these arrangements that I had.
Yeah.
in a garage, a good garage studio. I mean, a professional garage studio. And that was part of the whole Carpenter sound, Karen's lead and all those harmonies. When I got to the end of putting together the arrangement for Close to You, just like me, they long to be, bing, bing, da, bong, bong. I thought that's not enough to end it. It needs something. And that's when I imagined that tag, wah,
Yeah.
which was 4-part harmony, tripled. So there were 12 of us all together.
Yeah.
And being that we were familial and both sang in tune, it had a sound like no other sound.
Yeah, absolutely great. And it was your first #1 hit, a Grammy Award winner. Great days. You know, you both must have been absolutely thrilled. How did life change for you, Richard, after that song hit #1?
Well, the whole thing about, life changed overnight. And, of course, in a way, we still with our folks and all of that. And, royalties were yet to come in. On the other hand, it's in 6 weeks, that record was #1. And it stayed there for a month. And it was so popular and so many people liked the sound that we were being booked and asked to appear on all these different television shows almost immediately. So it just was a life-changing experience for the two of us.
Yeah, life was suddenly.
Then we followed it up. We've only just begun,
Yeah.
You get the one hit and then you always worry, am I going to be able to follow it up?
I was going to ask you about, We've Only Just Begun, because that was another massive hit single. And Richard, I read that you heard the song on a TV commercial for a bank. Is that right?
Yes, Crocker Bank. It was a soft sell ad, and it was done in soft film, and it showed a young couple getting married, and the rice is being thrown, and they drive off into this special sunset, and the legend says, "You've only just begun, let us help you get there, Crocker Bank." Well, I happened to, before Paul got to be well known, I knew his voice, Paul Williams this would be.
Okay.
And I knew Roger Nichols' melody. I knew them as a team, even though they hadn't had a hit. They'd written some things that I really liked. So when I heard that commercial, I knew that was Paul. I figured that has to mean it's a Nichols melody. And so since they were writers for one of A&M's publishing companies, I saw Paul on the lot of the A&M lot and said, "Is that a whole song?" Because the commercial didn't have the bridge, it was not a whole song. And he said, "Oh yeah." So I got a demo of it.
Okay.
And then put together the arrangement. And it was a perfect follow-up for Close to You.
Yeah. Another massive hit song. Goodness. Whenever I hear a Carpenter song like Superstar or Yesterday Once More, Rainy Days and Mondays, I always stop to think, goodness, didn't Karen have such a stunningly beautiful voice?
She did. Everything about, it's God-given.
Yeah.
And she was born to sing. Some people are just born to sing, like Perry Como. Everything is just right. The pitch, the sound, the vibrato, all of it. And Karen had it all. And in addition, she took right to overdubbing, where some singers really don't. And she could take that marvelous vibrato and flatten it out if we needed for like, just straight ahead, she could do it. And she could do anything, really. She was an incredibly gifted singer, a damn good drummer too.
Yeah, I was gonna come to that later. Tell us about Goodbye to Love, which is a massive song. I read that you were in London watching, you were in London in a hotel and maybe watching a late night film, Bing Crosby in the film Rhythm on the River.
That's it.
And it inspired you to write that song.
Yeah, in the movie, which is from right around 1940, 41. He plays a ghost songwriter to a very famous songwriter, played by Basil Rathbone. And the famous songwriter is going through a dry patch. And it's only referred to, but the famous Basil Rathbone's most famous song is Goodbye to Love. You never heard any Goodbye to Love. And then, of course, Bing led to this, that, and the other thing. But when I heard that, Goodbye to Love, I pictured the I'll say goodbye to love, no one ever cared, blah, 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 blah. And that's how so I wrote the melody, that much of the lyric, and then my songwriting partner, John Dennis, the lyricist, he finished the lyric.
All right. And what about the guitar solo at the end?
We were on tour in the spring of 1971. We're on tour a lot, but at this particular time. And a group called Instant Joy, not a well-known group at all, but was opening for us. And it was led by a guitarist named Tony Peluso. And there was this one song in their set where he'd break into a guitar solo, improvised, and it was different every night, but it was melodic. It wasn't just a bunch of notes. And I thought, there's something, this guy's pretty special. So Karen and I got a hold of him and asked him to come to Studio B at A&M Studios and play on this record. And that's where we find out that Tony couldn't, he never learned how to read, which really didn't mean anything, you know, if you have the talent.
Yeah.
So I sang him, I gave him a chord sheet. I sang him the first part of the melody, which you hear on the record, da, 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 and it goes for a few bars. And of course he had the chord sheet. And I said, once you get here, take it, improvise, you know. And he laid out that solo, like 98% of it on the first take.
Whoa.
There was one spot near the end of it I went crazy about, so we did a second take and edited it, and that was it. And then we asked him to be in our road group.
All right.
Yeah, something. He never, you know, if you're born with talent, that's the most important thing, whether you can read or not, as long as you can play beautifully. But when we got there, that's when he said, well, you know, I don't read. I said, doesn't matter. I'll sing it to you, and so on and so forth. Then he showed us how he learned to tune a guitar. And I don't know if you know anything about how to tune a guitar, but, you know, the 6 strings, you have 6 different notes. And just from his inborn talent, he had tuned it a whole different way. Like the 2 bottom notes were unison S, F, F, and then the whole thing went up in a drone, like in fifths.
All right.
And that's how I learned to play.
All
he
right.
taught himself to play.
Yeah. Amazing. Listen, I saw a great picture on your website, on the Richard and Karen Carpenter website, of you at the piano when you were just 8 years old and you were sitting there playing away with a big smile on your face. Why do you think you got into music at such a young age? What was the inspiration?
Well, I inherited, so did Karen, inherited the love of music from my parents. And Dad had quite a collection of, at the time, 78s. This was, you know, in the 40s. And I would get into them. Unfortunately, they were shellac, so a number of them broke. But I would listen to all sorts of different music, light classical all the way to Dixieland jazz, and just loved it. And we lived back east at the time in New Haven. So most of the homes had basements, and a lot of people would finish them off, make them club sellers. So Dad took the records and our big Zenith radio and hooked up the record player. And I would just listen, and then finally I was interested in learning to play. Not at first, but my parents decided maybe I should have piano lessons.
All right, and boy, did it pay off. And while you were learning piano, Karen was learning drums.
Yeah, we'd moved to Southern California in '63 because Dad couldn't stand the cold weather back east, and it was one of the greatest moves in many ways he ever made. And Karen I'd come to know that the band director of the Downey Senior High band, and they had a provision there that if you belonged to marching band, you didn't have to take phys ed. I guess the idea that you'd be marching along at the football games. And of course, Bruce heard me play, the band director, and that took care of that. But Karen, she didn't want to go to phys ed. And so I asked the director, can you find her somewhere? And she could read music. So he gave her Glockenspiel, which marches in the drum section. And she found out in no time that she could take the sticks and do press rolls and all these different things. And so she asked my folks for a drum set. And this was really on faith. It's not like we had a great deal of money. And but they saw that she had the interest and they bought her a drum set. She took right to it. All the exotic time signatures, all of it. And she had perfect time, which is the key ingredient you need to be a really good drummer, is that you have like metronomic time. And she could really play well. Like the drum work she does on this Masquerade is really fabulous. But of course, she was an even much better singer. And it took a while to get her out from behind the drums.
Yeah, I remember when you played the Royal Albert Hall, London in 1971, Karen did this great drum solo, which kind of surprised a lot of people because they didn't expect it, because they thought she was just the singer,
Yeah.
But she did that as well. I remember it. And I thought, whoa, she played drums so well,
Yeah, and of course, she was only 20 when we did that Royal Albert Hall. It was really magical. Of course, it's not only the history, but it's just an absolutely gorgeous hall, inside and out. It's fabulous. And it was standing room only. And Karen really didn't want to get up and have to stand in front. She wasn't born in a trunk, she wanted to stay behind the drums. But we coaxed her out for a few songs where she fronted the group. But most of the time, yeah, she sat and she could play. So in addition to singing, a drummer, you're using all four of your extremities. And so she could do the drum fills, the whole business, sing at the same time as she was doing the drum fills. And yet it did not affect her vocal at all. She was really an incredible talent.
Yeah, that is so tough, Richard, to drum and sing at the same time. I just want to touch on Christmas just for a moment here, because the Carpenters' Christmas Portrait is such a fine, festive album with songs like Sleigh Ride. The Christmas song on it is great. And A Merry Christmas, Darling is just such a beautiful song. Karen sounds so amazing on that song. What are your Christmas memories growing up with Karen?
Oh, well, just growing up with our family at Hall Street in New Haven, because if there's one time you wanted snow, it was around holiday time, Christmas time. Although it rarely snowed on Christmas there, but every now and again it did. And we put up the tree, and Dad would take the trouble to hang what was then a real tinsel. And you have to do that a little bit at a time, and it was made out of lead back then. So if you did it right, it actually looked like icicles. And it took a great amount of time. to set it up. And, you know, it was a typical thing where you shook some of the presents before Christmas morning. But the music came out very early, the Christmas music that we had. And it always remained a very special time, especially to Karen. She played that Christmas album year round, and she liked it so much. But
Yeah,
it's a good group of songs. And in addition to some of my arrangements, we had some of the greats like England's Peter Knight did a couple, and of course, Billy May, and an oversized orchestra and chorus. And yeah, it turned out to be a very, very successful album. It keeps doing very well.
yeah, it does. It sounds just terrific. Merry Christmas, Darling. What a great track that is.
Well, thank you. That's, of course, that's mine and my arrangement. And that still remains one of my favorites. The original one was done by us, was done in the fall of '70. And Karen, as she got a couple of years older, noticed that her very early stuff had a huskier sound to it. And she wasn't that crazy about it. So when we got around to doing the album itself, which was in '77 into '78, she redid the lead. And if one listens to the original one and then the one from the album, you can hear a difference in her voice.
Okay. I just want to ask you, when you were both growing up in California, which artists and songs really inspired you to make music?
We moved in June of 1963, and it just happened to be a great time in America for automobiles, because that's my other love, and pop music. So, of course, the Beatles, I had heard one of their records on one of our top 40 stations. It was on what I learned later. It was called Limited Rotation, and it was From Me to You. And I thought, what a record. And this is in summer of '63. This is before they hit over here. And you know, a DJ, as well known, not every time, especially on a top 40 radio, do you get the artist name. And so I waited and waited till it came back around and heard it was the Beatles. I thought that was an odd name. And then I had to special order it. And that's when I learned it was BEAT. And I still think it's one of their greatest records. I learned later that it was a #1 record, of course, in the UK and all. But I thought it should have been a #1 record here. I guess it was just a little early on. And the Ronettes' Be My Baby, that was out around the same time. Of course, Louie Louie was the same time.
Oh, what
talking about 1963. And the whole thing, the British invasion, but on top of that, Bossa Nova, which was a couple of years earlier, but still was very much on the airways. It was just a magical time for pop music.
All right, brilliant. Thank you very much, Richard. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, David.
And the very best of luck with the Piano Songbook. It's, I listened to it. It's terrific, beautifully played album. And
Well,
thanks very
thank you
much.
so much.